Dollies left and right. Truck is you truck in, you truck out, you dolly left, you dolly right. Dolly over. No.
Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bales Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. You know, I've been in commercial broadcasting for nearly 3 decades. I have done weekly interview shows for about 20 of those 30 years. And I think one of the topics, besides tax relief and broadening the tax base, that has come up more often than I can think of, is the subject of possibly merging some aspects of the largest city in the state and its home county of Douglas. Here today is Lou Lamberty, who has worked with both of those entities over the years. He is currently chairman of the Joint Omaha-Douglas County Merger Study Committee. He's a former county engineer. He is former head of the State Roads Department and Public Works Department of Omaha. So you know the inner workings of at least one aspect of.
I have some knowledge of several aspects of the county and the city, yes.
You head up a 7-member committee that is about a little more than half a year old.
Correct.
And you are commissioned by both Omaha and Douglas County
That's
to
correct.
look at seriously merging some aspects of these two entities?
We were given the task to look at every possible type of merger that might be possible between the city and Douglas, from merging just individual departments to what we call a total structural merger of city and the county. And we're looking at all aspects of it and hope to have a report done by June of this year.
Now, I'm sure the people that live in Lincoln or Lancaster County think it's very strange that we haven't done some of these things, because they have been working for decades in merging parts of their government and have done a pretty good job. But there's a little difference, is that Lincoln is the majority of people in Lancaster County, more or less.
Well, Omaha is by far the majority of the people in Douglas County.
Then you get into square miles.
And square miles is a different deal. Lincoln merged several years ago a number of departments. They've never merged totally, city and county, but they've merged probably half a dozen departments. And as far as we know, that's been working very well. And that's certainly one model to look at, just merging certain departments that make sense.
Now, we do have some success stories in Omaha and Douglas counties. Certainly, the merging of the law enforcement and criminal justice and some of the prosecutorial information systems.
Well, actually, there are two. There's one really good success story and another one just getting underway. 911 was merged about 4 years ago, and that's worked very well. It makes perfect sense to have one 911 system instead of two.
And it certainly does, since they're upgrading to
it's by far the best way to go, and that's worked very well. So we got a good model there in Douglas County. They are currently merging their information technology departments. Each the city and the county have an IT department, and they're merging them into basically a semi-independent operation called .com, which will serve both city and county. So there's some there's a good success story and another one just happening. So they're making some efforts.
And just this past week in the Omaha World Herald was a story that about something that your committee had recommended, at least an initial recommendation, of merging the city and county planning departments. Now, the city, a lot of people don't realize, though many do, that the city has, 3 mile
zoning jurisdiction.
So that it can, that would be the next thing likely that they would annex, at least in some directions.
Right.
But the county does some, and then sometimes there doesn't need to be much approval at all for developments or small developments. So what are the landmines there?
Well, first of all of Douglas County is in somebody's zoning jurisdiction, and there's actually 6 different planning and zoning jurisdictions in the county. City, 5 of the smaller cities each have a zoning jurisdiction, and the county. So the problem that we see is that none of them are consistent in terms of their zoning and land use plans. And we think some consistency would make sense. And we also just don't think it makes any sense anymore for the county to be in that business. The city is a much bigger planning agency, and again, their plans are not consistent. The county just recently approved a subdivision with 5-acre lots, which the city does not like at all because it, in the long run, it ends up being costly to the city when they want to annex that area. So yeah, we recommended that city and county planning merge.
And that recommendation would involve Omaha planning and Douglas
County planning.
That
that's correct.
which is not including the other jurisdictions.
Yeah, we have not made a recommendation on the other jurisdictions, other than we need to take a hard look at our relationship with Elkhorn. And the committee has said either Omaha's got to look at annexing Elkhorn, or we have to arrive at some agreement with them on how we're going to plan the area that is between us and Elkhorn, because we're now bumping up against their planning jurisdiction, and we need to have compatible planning in that area.
So obviously you've had some discussions with those people.
Yes, we've had
by those people,
all of
that
the
sounds terrible. With the nice people, fine people of Elkhorn.
We've had all of the planning people from all over the county in and talk with us and got to understand how they all operate. Yes.
But before we move to some of the other departments, I think that the talk over the years, should we merge, parts or functions or staffs of Douglas and Douglas County and Omaha, there's never been a real need. But as you point out with the planning department, when you're jammed up now against someone else's jurisdiction, then you start
need
to
to start talking to each other.
But money and finances of the two governmental subdivisions, Omaha and Douglas County, are going to be tight. Now, you're not going to implement things if they're accepted right away, but over the long haul, there will be some economies. Not always economies, but there may be some economies.
We believe there will be economies, and as we make recommendations on merging various departments, we're doing a financial analysis to try to determine what the cost savings could be. And we're in the midst of several of those right now, so we don't have really good numbers on any of them that we've approved. But we think there'll be some economies. They won't be huge. It won't be an immense amount of money saved, but we do believe there'll be some savings.
When you look at the different possibilities of merger or at least increased cooperation, maybe looking toward merger, what are the mismatches? What are right now, we're still looking at it, but what appears to be apples and oranges?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
We talked before the show maybe about the fire department right now, because you've got so many volunteer fire departments. But what are the ones that you just say they would move way down on a list for obvious purposes?
Well, I don't know that we've made that determination. I probably need to step back for a minute. The first point that we learned and that people need to understand is that Douglas County and the City of Omaha basically have no overlap in the services they provide the citizens of Omaha. There is no overlap. Now, there's a number of parallel functions. We have a sheriff that provides law enforcement outside the city. We have a police department that provides law enforcement in the city. We have a county engineer that does roads outside the city. Public Works does roads in the city. And a whole bunch of support organizations, purchasing, vehicle maintenance, which both of them have. The tack we've taken is to look at all of those parallel functions and see which of those we believe might make sense to merge, either because of better efficiencies, better service delivery, or whatever.
And so what are some of the areas that you have been looking at besides planning?
We have looked at the county attorney and the city legal department. We've made a recommendation that the prosecution functions of the city legal department be moved over to the county attorney's office. And because we believe that it would be a more effective use of manpower. We think there's some savings there, and we think we just operate a little bit better. We have looked at the Public Works Department and the county engineer, and we've recommended that those two departments be merged. Again, they basically provide the same services on streets. It appears that there's significant cost savings that could be generated if those two were merged. And so we have recommended, at least preliminarily, that merger of those two departments happen. We have looked at the sheriff and at the Omaha Police Department. And again, they provide very similar services, but in different places. And again, we believe that merging them would make some sense, that there would be some economies to be gained, and it just makes sense to have one police force countywide.
Does it come down to, other than, you know, there's all kinds of things that would have to be hammered out in these things, labor, you know, who works for who, or how
Right.
does that work? But certainly, who pays for what part of?
Well, that's one of the things that the entities would have to work out, how they're going to pay the bills. Obviously, both entities right now are paying, and they'd have to figure out the financial arrangements before they merged any of these. In 911, they figured it out very easily. City of Omaha pays the county so much a year for their share of 911. Those kind of deals can be worked out. There's another issue here in working out these financial deals, and that's an issue of equity. For example, if you take the police department and the sheriff's office serves, for law enforcement purposes, serves only those folks that live outside the city limits of Omaha. But the truth is that the citizens in Omaha pay about 80% of that bill, because we pay property taxes to the county also, and county property taxes are what support the sheriff. So there's some equity issues.
So we're almost paying twice?
Well,
not completely.
Not completely, but citizens of Omaha are paying for their police force, and they're paying the biggest part of the bill for the county police force also, even though they don't get much service out of that because they don't live in the county. So there's some equity issues that come up. Same kind of equity issues show up in the county engineer of public works. They're going to have to be worked out.
So what if then, who would be the biggest opponents of, let's say, merging, let's take public works and, you know, and the roads. The people outside who are only paying once, in a sense?
Yes.
That's very blunt.
The people in rural Douglas County, in general, are probably not going to be very supportive of merging city and county. They will have to pay their fair share, and they don't now. And in the case, at least, of the county engineer, their snow removal services will probably not be as good under a merged system. The county engineer has more people, more trucks per mile of road than the city does. He operates at a higher standard on snow removal. And there's no question in my mind, if you merge the two, we'll move toward the city standard on snow removal, which in my mind is quite good, but not as good as the county, and we know that.
Well, so where does the accountability on something like this go? In other words, if I'm a county resident who gets their road that comes up toward their house cleared pretty well, pretty fast,
Right.
When it comes down to voting on a merger, assuming you could work out the money details
Right.
or whatever, you know, I'm going to call my county commissioner and say, no. Are the county commissioners that represent the rural areas then, or do some represent rural and urban Omaha areas? I mean, where is the conflict going to come, or the possible voting naysayers?
First of all, the county board represents the entire county.
Correct.
And
Which includes Omaha.
84% of the population lives in Omaha. So there is no one county commissioner that represents a specifically rural area.
Correct.
Claire Duda may be the closest. He may have the most rural areas of any of
Northwest,
them.
north and
North
west.
and northwest, correct. But basically, they represent the whole county, and 84% of the county is the city of Omaha. So they're representing all of us.
There seems to be a will on both the governing bodies, the city council and the county board, to move ahead where it's practical. I don't know how the political will come down to politically practical.
We
on
don't know
certain
either.
items. Are you getting the support of all the different departments in, asking for information and interviewing, and I mean, are they just kind of arm's length?
No, all the departments have been very, very cooperative, and we've asked them for a lot, and we've asked them for a lot of time and a lot of information, and we keep going back to them for more information, and they've all been exceedingly cooperative. We've been very happy with that. We haven't had to twist any arms or pull any teeth. We've just nicely asked, and they've nicely produced, and we appreciate that. It's made our job a lot easier.
This is a big job. I mean, there's a lot of information for you and the folks on
Yes.
your committee to take in a relatively short period of time, because you plan on having a report 13 months after your
Right.
formation.
Correct.
And so you're kind of busy.
Yeah, we're keeping busy. We're meeting on the average of once every 1 or 2 weeks, just depending on how we can work out our schedules, which is a big problem. And we put in a lot of time in between the meetings studying the information that we have. So yeah, this committee is working very hard.
You feel comfortable with, I mean, there's a pretty broad base of people on that committee, even though there's only 7 members.
It's a good committee. They're very bright people. They're very, very interested in this topic, and they're very willing to work hard at it. And yes, I think we're going to end up with a good report. What the politicians do with it is their business, but we think we'll end up with a good report that can be used and will have some real merit.
One of the things that people I know over the years that have moved to Elkhorn, let's say, because we talked about Elkhorn earlier, was because they like the distance from the hustle and the bustle, and they like that autonomy. But it is a bedroom community.
Correct.
They use the roads into Omaha and through Omaha. And so you talked about equity. It's kind of like working in Iowa or living in Iowa and working in Omaha. We've been concerned about people paying wheel tax and
Right.
inequity
Comes
there.
up every other year.
Every other year.
Right.
But ultimately, though, the people of Omaha who are the largest number there's not been a hue and cry from the citizens. But at some point, as we move out and these other subdivisions or greater Douglas County seem to have better snow removal or whatever it is, will there be a hue and cry, or do you think that people are just about ready to say, this is a good thing?
You mean a hue and
In
cry
Omaha.
against merger?
No. The
Oh.
people of Omaha saying, merge
Let's
by
merge?
golly, because
Well, I'll tell you, everybody that I've talked to, just common citizens, about this issue has basically said, why haven't we done it years ago? Why are we still studying it? I think the citizens of Omaha, at least, if put to a vote, would overwhelmingly support merger. There's no doubt in my mind, because I have heard no negative comments from anybody in the city of Omaha when they've talked to us about it.
you must, I know you have what I suppose people that are in your position call a dog and pony show, because you're asked to come out and
Right,
speak.
right.
And I don't mean that in any kind of
It's
negative.
a dog and pony show, yes.
But you have the kinds of things that you're saying today that you
Right.
go over, and this is what we're talking about. Do you get a different reception in outside of Omaha? In Douglas
I
County?
have not spoken outside of Omaha yet, so
Have
I
they
don't
not
know.
asked you?
They haven't asked me, so I don't know if I don't know what reception I would get there.
Well, that's kind of interesting.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
Maybe something to ponder for a very brief time, of course. What are the things that you personally, with your experience in public works and engineering and planning, what do you find most interesting about this endeavor that you're in the midst of?
Well, for me personally, the most interesting thing is trying to figure out if indeed there are cost savings and what those cost savings are. Trying to analyze how the operations work, where you might make some cuts without reducing service, and make them more efficient. That is my own kind of. That's the kind of thing I like to work on, and I've kind of taken that task on for the committee.
Now, when it comes to merging things, there's cultural mergers that have to happen
Yes,
when there's a
very-
merger. Are the cultures of these? I wouldn't think the city attorney and the prosecutorial things they do is much different than the culture of the county attorney and the kinds
Actually,
of
the
things.
culture is different, even in the attorney's office. The county attorney is an elected official, and all of the people in his office serve at his pleasure, all of them.
So there's not civil service.
There is no civil service in the county attorney's office. In the city attorney's office, there is civil service, and they operate. They've got people that have been there a long time, and it's a different system. So there is very much a cultural difference between, actually in most cases, all of the county and the city offices, just because of the different cultures in the city and the county. So that's an issue that would have to be worked out over time, and I think it's solvable. I don't think it's a big issue, but it's certainly there.
Well, there were issues on some other minor mergers of who was going to work for who and with their retirement pension and
Right.
those kinds of things. So
All of those
those
can
are
be
really
worked out.
They can.
All of those can be worked out. They were worked out in the 911. They can be worked out in anyone. It's a matter of sitting down and working them out. And frankly, the committee is not going to spend a lot of time on those issues.
No.
Our job is to recommend to the city council and the county board what mergers we think might make good sense. They can work out the details.
Do Do you feel you have the faith of the city council and the county board? I mean, that they have faith in what you're doing, or, I mean, I guess you wouldn't do it if you didn't.
I guess there's no way to measure that, but they appointed us, so I assume they have some confidence in our abilities to do this job. So yeah, I think we have faith. They have faith in us.
As you've gotten closer to coming up with recommendations, and you have made some recommendations, do you find good response? I'm not saying that they'll say, yes, we'll do that tomorrow, but are you finding
We really have
open
not.
ears?
We really haven't had much response from either the county board or the city council. We gave them an interim report about 3 months ago, which just kind of laid out what we'd done to date, and at that point we hadn't made any recommendations. And now we've begun to make some recommendations, but we have not sent them off to them in a formal sense, and we won't until we do our final report. One of our problems, and I don't want to make it sound like a problem, but we're doing challenges is we have to operate totally in the public. All of our meetings are open to the public, and so our discussions are open to the public. All of these recommendations that we've made so far are, I think, still tentative recommendations because we continue to gather information. So don't be surprised if we change our mind once or twice. So until we've got it all put together and have a firm grasp of all of the areas that we want to look at, we're not going to send off anything in writing to the council and the board. So
they haven't
they really haven't had anything to receive. They haven't had anything to respond to, and that's probably good. They need to wait for the whole package to be put together.
Have you found anything interesting from just an historical point of view of? I'm sure you didn't go back into the archives, and we know why Douglas County has certain jurisdictional things that the city doesn't. For instance, public health kinds of things. But things have changed. What kinds of things have changed other than Omaha growing?
Omaha's grown, obviously.
But are there any other kinds of things that have changed since that have become a little, I wouldn't say archaic because we haven't existed that long and there haven't been those huge changes, but are outmoded? Have you found anything that just? I'm not saying do away with anything.
I don't know that we've found anything that I would say was totally outmoded. What's changed is when the city was first formed and when the county was first formed, the city was very small relative to the county. Now the city is almost the county, and that's a major change. And so the question is, do you need two governments for basically the same people? And that's really kind of the basic question that's, I think, being asked us to look at.
Cities like Ralston, who have always, and I've never quite understood, and I've never done the research, that there's some sort of gentleman's agreement about not annexing, or maybe we can't annex them. I'm real confused about all that. I shouldn't be, but I am. I think a lot of people are, except the people in Ralston who have this down pat.
Who don't want to be annexed.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there will still be these entities. Ralston and who else? Then there's some smaller ones.
There are 6 small cities in the county: Ralston, Elkhorn, Bennington, Waterloo Valley, and Boys Town, which really is kind of an unusual case. So there's really 5 small cities out there. None of them have much interest in being part of a merger. I don't necessarily think that's bad.
No.
But if a merger happened, my guess is all 5 of them would opt out, and I don't think that's a problem.
Can you have a merger like that and have? I mean, obviously, I'm sure some counties somewhere have done this where they opt out. Are there any?
Almost always that happens. The small cities opt out of a city-county merger in the examples that we've seen. And basically, they pay for the services that the merged entity provides them. There's certain services that they will still have to get.
Like 911 would be an example.
911, all the health and human services, jail, some law enforcement. So they pay for the services, as they do now, one way or another, to the merged government. But then they keep their own little government and they provide certain services to their people that the merged entity wouldn't, like street maintenance, maybe sewer maintenance, police protection, some of those.
Why, other than maybe not having the political will, why hasn't this, why are we doing this now? Why haven't we?
Well, it's really interesting. It's been talked about a long time, as you well know. We went back into files and we found documents back to 1937 where it had been talked about. But for whatever reason, and I don't know the reason, there's never been a serious study of this. There is not in the file, or are not in the files that we can find at least, and I think it means they don't exist. There are no studies, no written reports of anything that's ever been done. So it's been talked about a lot, but nobody's ever gotten serious about it. So this is the first time in Douglas County, City of Omaha history that we've actually seriously sat down and looked at the possibilities of merging these entities and what the ramifications of that might be.
So the thing that's made it compelling at this moment in time is strictly a function of, or not strictly, but mostly a function of size of Omaha in comparison to the county and how it's moving.
How it's moving, I think maybe what's driving it more now than anything else is the hope that through some kind of mergers you might see some cost savings, because everybody's hurting for money right now, as you well know. And so if there's a driving force behind looking at merger now, it's probably money.
Would they be the gains that would be made, where they would be made, and we won't say that there will be a lot of them financially, would they be more short-term or long-term, or have you gotten a feel for that at all? I mean, can you see some short-term? And
the gains would be long-term. Frankly, in short term, while you're going through the merger,
sometimes it even costs a little more.
It could cost, but probably the cost savings will be much smaller. But over time, as you get the merger put together, whatever you're merging, the savings will be considerably larger. So, yeah, it's the long-term savings that we're looking at. We're not trying to figure out the interim, because that's up to the politicians to figure out. We're trying to figure out long-term, when you've actually merged these departments or these entities, what would the cost of that be compared to what it is today?
And how well it would work, and where I suppose the not problem areas, but the difficulties might lie.
Yeah, but what we're looking at is cost effectiveness. Can they deliver the service if they merge? I mean, is there a change in service delivery that might happen? Can we save some money? What's the accountability? Who's accountable to who in a merge situation? And that's a big one, by the way.
And who might be the best lead organization?
Who should be the lead
or
organization?
Some sort of a quasi-independent.
Or like a .com. And those are some of the more interesting issues that we're looking at as we look at each of these.
Did you find anything really quirky? Because you've been around government for a long time. Anything that surprised you about, gee, I didn't know they had that function, or I didn't know they also had that function? Nothing caught Lou Lamberty off guard?
Well, probably I've been around too long. I'm not sure about the rest of the committee who haven't had the experience in local government that I have, but I can't think of anything that caught me totally off guard. I'm kind of, what we've learned is what I expected to learn in terms of the functions that everybody provides.
That's why they got you.
Yeah, right.
To chair it. Hey, I want to thank you for stopping by today, and I guess the issue is stay tuned.
Right.
Because your report will be coming up in the spring.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I want to tell you that you can go to unotv.unomaha.edu. You can see this show or any of our past shows. And I want to thank you for being with us, Lou. It's always good to see you.
Good. Thanks for having me.
So thank you for joining us this week on Consider This. We'll see you next time.